How are you?
Welcome to the Sing to Thrive podcast. And we are here with the amazing Richard Lawton. He is a master voice coach and consultant, and he is known for his kind and encouraging and form style. And Richard has worked with CEOs and board directors and all levels of legal professionals and executive level managers. In a former life, as a theatre director and performing arts lecturer, Richard worked with the Sydney Theatre Company, NIDA, Sydney and Monash universities. At Monash, he won the VC's Award for Excellence in Teaching, and his long-standing meditation and yoga practice keeps him optimistic and energetic. He runs courses in mindfulness to help people attain high-performance mind, and since 2005, he has directed Soul Song Choir. He also used singing as a healing modality at the eating disorder unit at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. Wow. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
So lovely to have you here. And I will also share that Richard was an instigating factor in me starting Voice Jam. Watching your style and how you taught, it just was so warm and gentle and friendly. And, I had the perfectionist script and watching you, and it was like, oh, he does not have the perfectionist script. It's like, oh, hang on, what's that note? And off he went and checked his notes and came back. And I'm like, oh, this is casual. This is good. And so I thought, okay, I can do that. I can do singing circles or choirs if I can teach like that and I don't have to be perfect. So that was a big relief. So welcome, Richard.
If I can teach somebody as slack as he is, then I can get away with it.
No, you're a great teacher. I was just so relieved that it was okay to make a mistake. That was really what.
Isn't that a big thing? Okay, so we went, this isn't one of the questions, but I was talking about this with Mary last night about you've got a whole room full of people watching you. How many people are in that circumstance outside of the Olympics or something, or, like a stadium where there's a whole load of people and any mistake you made is right there, like most people, most of the time at work, I go, all right, well, I don't know. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? As a singing leader, there it is right there.
Yeah.
Which can be quite confronting.
Yes, however, I think for people in the singing group, it's actually very freeing because they see us making mistakes or us not getting it perfect, and we're totally okay with it. And so they're like, oh, it's okay. It gives them permission to not be perfect too. So
yeah, good point. Right. So it was really interesting series of questions that you asked, and I'm just come from 2 sessions back to back this afternoon, individual sessions with people that were so contrasting that it brings up a lot of that material. So the second one was from this Iranian woman who is a GP who's studying psychiatry and is going nuts studying psychiatry because it's just so, I'm working in the clinic.
oh, you would.
Yeah, but she is incredibly expressive and incredibly alive and lots of Leo in her chart and just big in that kind of thing
Yep.
and my studio backs onto a park, and so which is great because I say to people, well, just okay, send your voice out into the park. And she was, yeah, great, let's do it. And it was warm today for once, so the doors were open. By contrast, the guy before that grew up white in South Africa and very held down and very scared. So this was the 3rd session, and for him to just really put his voice out was scary and embarrassing.
Yeah.
And we progressed by the end of the 3rd session that it was okay to open the doors for him to. Yeah, like such a contrast. And that element of, like I was saying to him, notice when you feel contraction. Because I'd set him this task of when he went home last session to sing in the bath. And the reason I like people singing in the bath is because, I mean, you know how mostly people get in their own way around singing, and you see that tension up around the shoulders and that kind of thing. And so what happens in the bath is you just let go. And then there's been this shift, because I say, when a lot has happened, I say, okay, so you've seen it, you've heard it, now drop it, go do something else, come back and do it. And you might be pleasantly surprised, especially if it's in the bath, because you've got this relaxation. You're in a resonant space and people usually leave you alone there. And yeah, often have really quite a remarkable result from drop it, see it, hear it, drop it, and then do it. Wow, I've got this new voice, And you must have often heard that in session. Oh, is this my voice? And that's really quite sad, isn't it? That people have, it's like you've had a limb amputated, and often I've seen this thing whereby if it's somebody who's, say, in their 60s, and suddenly this sound comes out, and when they're getting over the surprise and the enjoyment of it, then the tears come after that. Like
the grief of not ever being able to use their voice.
Where have I been? Where have I been the last few decades? Yeah, it's yeah. Yeah.
So I remember, how did your journey start? Because you were quite shy as a kid, weren't you? Did you have a voice as a kid? Because I didn't. And that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about the healing work around the voice.
Yeah, well, yes and no. So I'm really old, so I can just remember the 50s. Really old. And in the 50s, there was a lot of hitting going on. If parents didn't hit you, they were spoiling you, And not only that, but occasionally the neighbors could have, could hit you as well, without retribution. So you had to keep your head down. And there were all kinds of rules. The 60s changed all this, but thank God. There are all these rules, that I didn't know about. And I'd be out somewhere and Mum said, just wait till I get you home. And I go, what did I do this time,
That happened in the 60s too, believe me.
Well, yeah, I guess. But it was kind of, there was an awareness there, And then also we lived in a small terrace house, and my father was a factory worker who was working shifts. So we had to play quietly. Now imagine telling 7-year-old boys to play quietly. It's like, there was all this, there was constant. So there was this, but then the yes part that I mentioned was, it was okay to sing. And everybody sang around the house. My siblings, my parents, Mum used to sing bits of musicals, never the whole thing, bits of it. And Dad had been a lay preacher before the war, so he knew all the Methodist. And so he'd got this wonderful, deep, resonant voice, and kind of like mine is now. And so he knew all these bloodthirsty hymns, hell and damnation hymns, and we loved them, like we just loved them. And then at school too, in that part of the world, it was very Methodist. So singing was how they got their jollies, And so at school, we all just, in assembly, we all went for it in a big way. And then as you got older and further to the back, you made up words, you made up dirty words to the hymns and changed it and that kind of thing, and nudged each other. But even the roughest of the kids would sing with gusto, So it was okay. And then didn't really have any training until I went to theatre school, and then it started really getting training, and then also then touring Europe with the theatre group and frequently being in a 1,000-seater theatre. And you got to know how to fill a theatre, without yelling. You've got to be able to make it intimate across a distance. And so when I've been training actors in the time since, and they'd say to me, "Oh, this is now it's all amplified. It's really made it for you." But they'd say, "Well, how do I reach the back of a theatre?" And I'd say it's 90-something% intention, and your body knows what to do. You just you aim at that space, and your body knows what to do if you don't get in your own way.
And that applies to most singing technique, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, really. But isn't it amazing? It's so obvious when you're standing outside,
Yeah,
seeing somebody get in their own way, isn't
yeah,
it? Yeah, you know,
sure.
all that kind of the two main ways that come to mind are, first of all, this kind of, I call it weightlifting. Okay, now I'm going to sing, there's that one. And
Yeah.
then there's the other one, which is like, ah, like, whoa, hang on. Can we just change that onset a little bit? Take the
Yeah.
push. It's
Yeah,
the pushing thing, because in both instances, of course, the thought is this is going to be hard.
mm,
Yeah.
Therefore, I've got to. And I just say to them, no, no, easy is right. Easy is right with voice. Force does not work.
Yeah.
mhm.
As with most things in life, but with voice, the feedback is instant. There. Mm.
Exactly. And
Mm.
interesting how much we changed in just 20 years, because in the 70s, it was so uncool to sing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, when you said that before, I thought, wow, I wanted to sing at school, but it just wasn't cool.
Mm.
You
And
know?
even if you were singing at school, like maybe you're in the school choir or thing or something like that, wasn't.
No, I didn't. I was too nervous, and I could sing.
Oh,
I knew
really?
I could sing. My parents were theatre singers, and from three, I was singing, but there was I had such a huge fear of rejection, and being at a school that was really rough, and nobody sang, and it was not cool.
Yeah, yeah. From normal schools, yeah, I was fortunate in that it was all Methodism there, and it was normal to sing. That was about the only fun they had. There's this famous joke about Methodists were against fornication standing up in case it led to dancing. Yeah, a bit of a dour lot, but the singing was where they got their jollies. But the other thing I've noticed is that if you were somebody who was singing at school, usually suddenly at 14, it changes.
Mm,
Suddenly
yeah,
it's really uncool.
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
Did you
we've
we
know?
seen
that
that with our
happens.
students.
I
Yeah,
see that. I'm seeing that right now, where
Uh-huh,
kids
uh-huh.
aren't returning this term because it's all of a sudden uncool within a matter of weeks
Yeah.
around that age. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's that interesting thing about, we've heard a lot of the horror stories, about Miss Jones told me to stand up at the back and mime and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
what I noticed was there are two spikes on the graph, 7 and 14, that Saturn cycle, where there seems to be a hypersensitivity. And maybe the teacher was just busy and said, oh, not now, or something. And it was taken on as he doesn't like me. I'm going to stand up at the back and mime. And then the 14-year-old one is more about the peer group. That's when you leave listening to your parents, if you did at all, and you get your opinions from your peer group, and you've got to really fit in, haven't you? You really,
absolutely. It was
so
life or death.
yeah,
That sounds very dramatic, but
That's how it feels.
oh, it was like that certainly when I was at school.
Maddie, you went through that.
Yeah, definitely. I pushed through,
Yeah.
but there were moments where, yeah, especially because I pushed through in the other direction where my voice and my singing ability had to be so perfect that it was cool enough to be singing. So
Oh,
if
right.
I made a mistake, that was the end of my life. Like it honestly felt so, it was such a trigger. And it was very overwhelming at times, especially when you were asked as one of the main singers in the school to get up and perform something at assembly.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's can be really confronting. And I did it and I pushed through, but yeah, that goes to one of our other questions of the other side of that. In what role do you think vulnerability plays in
Oh yeah.
your voice?
Well, I mean, you can sing opera and not feel a thing, I would imagine. Maybe, I don't know. I suspect, some people do. But once again, coming back to individual sessions where a lot of the interesting stuff happens, I'm sure you see this thing where people get vulnerable very fast because, and they talk about the difference, like in therapy, you can kind of talk your way around your story and actually not really get vulnerable. But when you've got to open your mouth and make a sound and sing, suddenly, whoop, and then of course very quickly the tears might come or whatever. But yeah. So I think, of course, we both know that if we're doing a song that we've done 100 times before, you can kind of do it on automatic pilot. Well, if you're in choir and you're leading choir and you're kind of having to be the locomotive, I find a lot of the time that I'm a bit on automatic because my focus is over there, not on over here.
Yeah, that's
The
normal.
motive effect. And it's a pity really because I have to be careful it doesn't kill certain songs for me, Or alternatively, when I come back to it, it's just me on my own. And just, yeah, because I notice that when I'm driving the choir along, I use very little vibrato. It's all twang. It's all blah, because you've got a row of 10 people and you've got to get them to get it, and they're not quite sure. So you've got to lead. And that's pushing in a way. And vibrato for me is when I'm just sitting in me, and then I can just be in the song, and then I can feel it more. And then of course there are certain songs that evoke memories that can bring up tears as well, aren't there?
Absolutely.
One that always used to get me was that Bruce Springsteen song, Factory. Early in the morning, factory whistle blows, man rises from bed and puts on his clothes. I went, that's my father. I'm singing about my father, and I can feel it now. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. And that one gets me every time. I'll never do it in choir for that reason. I want it to stay like that,
I had a moment like that on Wednesday, and because we share a lot of original music, and each month I've been sort of in meditation, I'll, have an inspired idea, and all right, this month I'll write some songs about the ancestors.
Uh-huh.
And I shared a song this week and I nearly burst into tears. I had to pull myself out of it and when that happens when I'm just singing on my own, and I ask everybody, okay, close your eyes and just listen, because I've taught them, and then I want them to just listen once and then join in. And that's when I really get into the feeling of the song, because that's really what they remember and feel. I don't have to sing it perfectly. I'm just usually singing from my heart. And the other thing, talking about vulnerability, I always felt that as soon as someone walked into your room to have a singing lesson, every single limiting negative belief that they have about themselves starts bubbling up to the surface. And that's why when in the early days, when I started teaching back in 2006, I began noticing that, everybody's fears right on the surface. That's perfect to do a past stage clearing and healing session. So it's this amazing modality that Maggie Landman had taught me, and I'd run people through that and then get them to sort of look at the belief, and we'd shift the energy around that, and so then their body would relax more, and then they were more able to access their voice, and the fear would just dissolve. And that works fabulously. And Madeline does that too. You do that with your clients, don't you?
Yeah, even just last week, we went to sing first because she wasn't sure what the pack was about, and if she didn't know what she wanted to work on. So I said, okay, why don't we sing and see what comes up? And within a couple of phrases of singing, she's like, yeah. And then we went straight in. As that emotion starts to come to the surface, it's that perfect opportunity to shift it. And then the difference of not only the sound and the tone of her voice from before and after completely changed, but also her perception of her voice, which is key when we're talking about how vulnerability plays into freeing the voice. Because our voices are constricted if we are judging them and judging ourselves. Because that causes the constriction in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's just incredible to see the before and after of just someone's tone alone when your perception changes and when you shift the energy that's confining you. Yeah.
What did you get her to sing?
Oh, we were doing the Sing to Thrive 8 somatic vocal tips and techniques. So it was even, you know, I told her, don't focus on what you sound like. We're focusing on, you know, technique number 1, which is feel my feet now and getting grounded and in your body. But even that was like, you know, learning the pattern was overwhelming enough to bring up the fear. Yeah, just
and it's such a key thing. Sorry, I interrupted again. I'm enthusiastic. And it's such a key thing, isn't it, about people's opinion of their own voice? Like when I go into a room full of people in a corporate setting, and I'd say, how many people? I'll say, how many people here have got pictures on Facebook that they like? You know, of yourself. You know, most people. You wouldn't post on Facebook if you did. Yeah, okay. Right. How many people here like hearing their voice played back to them? You know, which is really sad.
No one.
It's so central, isn't it? Yeah. So in sessions now, I ask them. I don't ask them, what did you like the sound? I don't refer to that. I say, how did it? What was the sensation? Yeah. What was the sensation? And that you can trust. Whereas this thing.
And I love saying, and I say this all the time, if you can tap into the feeling of whatever song you're singing, doesn't even matter what it is, but if you can tap into the feeling of beauty and whatever other word comes up for you, of what you want your voice to sound like, all of a sudden that resonates in your tone and your whole voice changes with that feeling. And so the judgment of the sound, as you were saying, it dissipates, or it's a lot less than it was before. But even for me, listening to my own voice back, when we first started recording the Sing to Thrive songs, I was not a fan of how I sounded, because you do sound different.
No.
I wasn't. And I had work. By that point, I'd done a lot of healing work around my voice and my judgment of my voice and feeling good enough. And yeah, I was so surprised, because in my head, I sound different to how I sound recorded. And it took me a little bit to get used to it and come to see and feel the beauty. And that was because the recording process was such a long journey. You know, we didn't do it all in one day. We did it over
a year and a long time.
Year and a half.
Was this not the series that you were doing when I was up Kamal?
Yeah, back in like
Kamal, at Art of Audio.
That was.
He's in the studio, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, and we got in singers from the choir that I was running, because I was concerned that real musicians would judge the music, because I knew it had a purpose.
Right.
And so the people that were singing in singing circles, they loved it. So I thought, and so I just handpicked the ones who I knew had good pitch. And of course, you came up. I mean, that's still Kamal's favourite song, the one you sang on.
Oh, really?
Or you sang on quite a few of the songs, actually. But the Walk With Me, ba-da-ba-da-da, ba-da.
I do that in class all the time.
Ba-da-ba-da. Yeah, that's a great warm-up with the shalabas.
It's called Walk With Me.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the layers of harmonies, then your bass line comes in.
I'll send it to you.
It's perfect to do in group. It's really fun.
That'd be great. Yeah,
it's good fun. It's a great song.
But that goes in with what we were saying, because you wanted the people in the studio to have the right emotions,
resonance and
heart. And the heart. So that it's just like a clear indication of how much that actually affects not only the sound of your voice, but the overall feeling of the song and music in general.
And that brings me to a point. I remember having being at a singing workshop with you, Richard, and you said, give the mind a job.
Oh, yes.
Remember that? And I thought, oh, okay. And then we did that little technique where had to focus on the audience and look at everyone that was wearing glasses, or everyone that had red hair, or everyone that had whatever. And immediately the nerves left, because you weren't focusing on your fear of, oh my God, am I going to get this right? Oh my God, am I going to be good enough? You know, all the thoughts that go through our heads when we first start singing and we haven't dealt with our fears. I was surprised, and I've done that at a lot of workshops, and people are amazed at how it shifts the feeling just by shifting your focus, and it shows you just how powerful the mind is. Which brings us to, you know, what we're singing about, and that was the whole purpose with Sing to Thrive. That evolved in a sort of an accidental way, because I was desperate for better material. I didn't like a lot of the choral songs, and I didn't like what the kids were bringing in for their singing lessons, because they were so highly sexualized and really the content was dodgy. And so I started writing music to say that again.
Maddy, notice her reaction to that. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
Well, my first song that I wrote was Be Real, be who you are, say what you feel, have the courage to stand and be real. And teaching that to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, even older than that, teenagers, they just did it. And I just made sure within all the songs that there were almost like different types of scales, or the melodies just always came to me, because I'd already done something like 15 years of professional singing, doing gigs. That served as a bit of an apprenticeship for me of melodies, because when you're singing cover songs, you're singing top 10 hits. People want to hear all the hits, right? So, and back then with the tape recorder, we had, it would have been, I started singing professionally in the late 80s. Yeah, so it would have been that long. My maths isn't my strong point. We had a tape recorder, and we didn't have, I would write down, I'd listen to the song and I'd write out the lyrics, and I'd always notice, oh, okay, this is that pattern. Oh, all right, this song's got this. And I started noticing all the different ways a song could be structured, and then what really made a song catchy, and then noticing, oh yeah, that's a good hook. And then I got to a point where I could hear a new song that came out, and I go, that'll be a hit. Because I just heard it's got a recipe about it, you know, and it was always the less complicated songs.
Yeah.
They were easier songs, chord wise, and even the structure of the song. It was just.
ABBA were really good at writing hooks. I mean, most
weren't they?
of their lyrics was kind of bong tiddle pom, you know, but like there's only one of their songs I like, which is Thank You to the Music. I really like it. Isn't that gorgeous?
I love that song. I used to love SOS, but I think I was just, you know, the SOS person. Someone come and save me from my life.
And then you realize that no one's coming to save you.
No, we've got to save ourselves.
That's right. Well, what do you think the most common misconception people have about their voice is?
Right. Well, we just talked about that thing about people not liking the sound of their voice. And so I often say to somebody, well, just try this. If you do that, you'll actually get a much better sense of it's done.
So explain what you're doing, so for people that are listening,
So yeah, you cup one hand around your ear and the other around your mouth. So you're sending a much more direct signal. So that then what happens is because in our hearing in our skull, it's mainly trebled, so it doesn't really do much with the bass tones. When you start to get the bass resonances happen, and so without having to rig up equipment and get it, you know, like it's just a very quick way of letting.
Oh, wow, yeah, right. I knew the hand behind the ear, but I didn't know the hand on the mouth, around the mouth.
Yeah. It's when you speak or sing that you'll hear. So you're getting the bass resonances then, which most people, which give it fullness, so most people are only hearing the tip of the iceberg of their voice, and that's what they're judging their voice on.
Yeah. And so with that, like, in your experience, how does posture and body alignment affect the voice? And like, what are some simple practices that can help people enhance their vocal performance, whether they're speaking or singing?
Yeah. Well, of course, there's a lot of work. Alexander technique goes hand in work, and that's really quite subtle. The the tilt of the head, that thing about just finding that place where, because a lot of people do this when a lot of people do that when you sing, and sometimes and that can really close off your throat if you do that.
Yeah, tipping the head back and tipping the head forward, because a lot of people do that when they sing low notes. They do this thing and it constricts. So it is keeping the head level.
Or if you get a little bit if you lengthen these sternocleidomastoid muscles and you anchor there, this is what opera singers
through the neck, yeah.
You've got a little bit of a tilt there. And to me, it feels like lengthening your windpipe so you get
I can feel that just doing it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's different to actually putting your chin down.
Yeah, it's different to that, which possibly has something to do with either shame or holding the words here. Yeah. Yeah.
I always feel the inside of my ears stretch open when do you notice that? Yeah, in my somatic techniques that I created, they're simple, but they're so effective. I call it the global head stretch. And it really is just about opening the whole chamber of the head up.
That's right. That course you did, you mentioned the global head stretch. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like the waist, for me, the waist up is the pathway of the voice. It's like, if we can be relaxed, and not having the shoulders concaved forward, but opening up the chest, relax the shoulders, lengthen through the neck. This is your bit, lengthen the neck and the crown of the head and the tips of the ears to find the ceiling. Standing tall, and then using, singing from your belly, but making sure this upper body stays open and relaxed, and then putting space between the back teeth. You taught me that. And then for me, I noticed when I was singing professionally that I would do this thing with my ears, because I can actually wriggle my ears independently of each other. Like, I've got this whole thing going on with my ears, but I can expand them open. And I started noticing, oh wow, my tone sounds fatter and richer when I do that. And it's almost like the chamber of the head expands because it's the resonating chamber.
Yeah.
And I always looked at it as, well, if your head's stressed and you're scrunched up, and you will have that sound of a tone when you're speaking and singing, but the more you can stretch it open, because how often do people do a head stretch? Hardly ever, except when we yawn. We don't think, oh, I'm going to go and do a head stretch. Like, I might lie on my yoga mat and do some other stretches. I'm head stretching all the time because I know it opens my sound up. But I think that's a really great tip for people too, just to remember that the body is the instrument, and the more relaxed and open we are, the better we sound.
You just mentioned lying on the yoga mat, and sometimes I think, and sometimes I use that with a little bit of support under the head for people who are pushing, who are tense, and lie down on the floor. And the other thing about that is that when somebody's lying on the floor, you can really see that difference between breathing here and breathing here. It really shows that up. For somebody who's struggling with, who breathes, take a big deep breath.
Yeah, and it's shallow. It ends up here. Yeah.
And 40,000 breaths a day. They've rehearsed it, So the way to overcome that, like to lay somebody down and then one head, oh right. It doesn't always translate when they get back up again. Sometimes it's a while to. But of course, breathing into the top half of your lungs is shock and anxiety. And when I'm working with lawyers who appear in court and they're very scared, you know, and I mean, some of them, apparently they throw up before they appear in court. I mean, that's a bit extreme, but
Wow. Well, I mean,
It sounds so stressful.
yeah, so I teach, you know, breathe down and ground. And the other thing is if when the adrenaline's flowing, this is another thing, when the adrenaline's flowing, if you're on the spot. So that's something that is for extreme physical activity, fight or fly. Stand there and pretend you're normal. And what will happen is that energy goes up and up and up and up and up, and the brain starts to whiz, the shoulders go up, and it's just generally like leaving the ground, get very ungrounded.
and your voice is affected too. You can hear it in the voice.
Hand around the throat. Yeah. And so one of the first things I get them to do is stand on a train. Stand on a train when there's nothing to hold on to. And straight away, it's almost like you can feel your toes grip the floor. You suddenly, you're back to the lower half of your body.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before at the beginning of a session about, Maddy, you did, about feeling your feet on the floor.
Yeah, that's the first technique in the 8 somatic tips and techniques that are made. And it's all about, making sure, one, that your weight's in the balls of your feet and not back on your heels, but also reiterating that point that if you're not grounded in your body, especially when it comes to singing, a lot of the reasons for that is nervousness and fear and anxiety around actually using your voice. So at the start of a session, we always make sure that, you know, you take some grounding breaths, breathing right down into your feet, focusing on your feet, doing, you know, whether it's tree meditation or some other kind of grounding breath work. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's that reminder to get into your body before you start singing, to help with that adrenaline rush or the cortisol that starts flowing when you get to fear and nervousness, because that takes you out of your body. So yeah, that's why it's important at the start of any session to come back down into your body and be grounded and in and focused and present. Because as what Mum said before, when we're singing, our voice, our body is the instrument. So if we're not in our instrument, how are we meant to make it sound good?
I mean, somebody who's come for a first session, I often say to them, the hard part was getting through the front door. They're pretty scared, you know, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Going up is definitely the hardest part.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, have you got that? I think sometimes, you know, somebody will contact you and then you don't hear for like 2 years and it takes them 2 years to get round to it.
Yep, I've had that.
Yeah.
It was interesting with those somatic techniques. I almost needed to do them for myself when I first started teaching, because I was nervous as a new teacher, and I knew how to sing because I'd lived and breathed it, but I hadn't gone to any special university to learn how to sing. So
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, very much so. And
I get that. Even after all this time, I can still get, not in a session, but in choir I can.
Really?
Be a better musician. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I still get that too, because I've heard myself say, oh, I only sing. I can't really play an instrument. I play the ukulele, but at summer song camp, I remember Tane saying, oh, but the ukulele's not really an instrument. Like, it is so. I love the ukulele.
Yeah. Actually, I wish, what's her name? Shelley plays a big one. What do you call this? A big ukulele?
The tenor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a tenor.
No, sorry. Baritone. It's a baritone uke, and it's the top 4 strings of a guitar.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, she, because I was at Magnetic Island and was working on them.
Yes, yeah, I'm in a band with Shelley now. Funny you should mention.
Well, I noticed that it was so good. It was just like really handy. It was no big deal.
Yeah.
In pitch, because generally speaking, gravity will take over. And, you know, by the end of the song, the basses are on their knees.
For sure. I've never heard it said like that. Gravity takes over the sound. That's so funny. It's so true.
Well, yeah.
Constantly, all collectively dropping in pitch together.
There's a common concern, especially if there's really high notes, because the the tops will just shave a little bit off each time, and then
Exactly.
Every time.
I wish, I learned how to play piano in the last few years to some extent, and it has helped a bit. But I'm not good enough to really do that thing where you really
accompanying the choir. Yeah.
It's
that's what I love about the ukulele.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the ukulele. I play guitar, but even still, my guitar is extraordinarily simple, and I learnt guitar to support my voice. But only just recently this year, having joined 2 different bands as a singer, it's like, actually, I need to stop downplaying my value as a singer, because it's one of the hardest things, really. I mean, for me, it feels so easy because I've grown up with it being such a natural part of my life. But it's for so many people, it's way harder than learning guitar or piano or any other instrument. And then to utilize that and, do what we do as singing leaders and hold space for other people to find their voice, it's a lot of value. And it's like, we are musicians, even though we're just singers. It's like, no, we actually need to remember that, because my imposter syndrome is more the fear of judgment that other people will think I have, that the imposter syndrome thing, they will think that I'm not trained enough or whatever. So my fear of judgment of
interesting, isn't it? I remember once hearing the expression, cows moo, sheep bleat, and humans judge. In other words, they're going to anyway.
Yeah.
They'll project all kinds of stuff on you as a singing leader, good and bad.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and not having that outcome dependency. Just, early on, I was very blessed to just have really embodied that belief around, well, not everyone's going to like what I do. I don't like a lot of music out there. I don't resonate with it. So, and that's okay. And I say to people, that's all right, just come. If it's not your cup of tea, I will not be offended. It's totally cool. Just give it a go. And, whatever. It doesn't matter. I did have a question about, we know the voice is a tool for overcoming trauma. Can you just share a little bit about what you did in the eating disorder hospital? I think that would be really helpful for people to hear that.
Oh, yeah. And I have a psychiatrist client, psychiatrist who's been coming every week for years, who used this as well in sessions. So when I first went there were 12 chairs, each with a cushion on, and it was all female in the beginning. And they all came in one by one, sat down and put a cushion on their lap and looked at their shoes. And I thought, this is not going to be an easy gig. And so we started off humming. And I'd play that Chakra Sounds CD. Yeah, it was a CD back then, was it? Yeah, it must have been.
It would have been.
And we started off with just humming. And bit by bit, it sort of opened out. And the psychologist I was working with, we had a really good double act. And we played a couple of silly games as well. And we'd kind of be a bit of Mutt and Jeff. And, one of us would act dumb and the other would correct them. And and then after about 6 months, we had complaints about the noise, which was...
most unfortunate.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it got killed. The program got killed by the woman who ran the show, the chief psychiatrist, who was obviously needed a fair amount of healing herself. But anyway, yeah, she turned it into a drop-in group with people with high anxiety. Of course, it was just fell apart. But the trauma, the healing of trauma. Oh yeah, so much of it. The fact of doing this with a note. I don't know if you can see.
Yep, just singing and letting it expand open.
Yeah, so the start of every session, I get people to do that out the window across into the park. And that for me is a diagnostic, and you can hear past what's happening. So you can hear somebody who tends to swallow their tongue a little bit, somebody whose jaws kind of can't do that, those are the two main things. And then there is this thing about grief and the collapse. You mentioned it earlier about this
Your posture.
forward. So it's like putting sound and spreading your wings together. Really, well, we mentioned that thing about vulnerability, didn't we? But it really opens things out.
As soon as we're creating sound, we're massaging the vagus nerve.
Indeed.
There's so much science behind all of this now, and that's what's so wonderful. I remember a case study with a client who I didn't even know she was going to Alcoholics Anonymous for 10 years. She sang with me for a year. She came and told me that she wanted to come and do a healing session. So we did that. And then she shared with me that she'd been in this AA for 10 years. And I encouraged her to stop telling herself she was an alcoholic, actually, and to sing different, more life-affirming words. And she shared with me that when she was little and the father would come home drunk, that she would automatically go and hide in the closet and start rocking and humming. And I thought, wow, the body's so intelligent. It knows how to calm itself. We get in our own ways. That's just humming to just, all right, just helps to create the sound needed for the nervous system to come back into alignment.
Just one more thing I need to talk about. You mentioned the vagus nerve, which comes all the way up through the cheeks and up to here, and then all the way down to the intestines. I discovered recently that this thing about massaging your molars to loosen your jaw, that kind of grip.
Yeah.
You can actually just gently massage this little hollow in your temple.
Oh.
You get the tip of the vagus nerve there. You
Really?
Yeah.
You just do a little wiggle of the jaw.
Yep.
And it's a much softer way of.
That's a great tip for people.
Just gently kind of.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I discovered that one recently.
That's beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
So our final question for you. What's one thing you wish everyone knew about their voice and its potential to transform their life?
Oh. We pretty much covered it, but I think the metaphor is, I wish they knew it was that easy to take the lid off. Take the lid off and just let it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful because it is that simple.
Isn't
it actually, if I was putting a word to it, it will be allowing. Give yourself permission to be loud, to be heard, and don't care what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, that permission. I often say to people, do you know what I'm selling here? I'm selling permission. Take permission. Yeah.
Yep.
You know what? I wish we could do something together. I don't know what and how, but I just love to.
Definitely.
What we know, and just play around with it. Yeah, it would be great.
Definitely, it'd be great. You're on for sure. We'll be doing that. So thank you very much for being with us.
Really? Oh, that was fun. Great. It was really nice to hang out with you. Yeah.
That's great. And I love listening to, I don't go to a voice coach because I do that, but it's so refreshing hearing you and listening to, oh yeah, of course, that's a great idea. And
vice versa. That's what I mean. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's really, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because a lot of our stuff's just from experience, because the whole somatic vocal tips and techniques was like, all right, this is how I'm standing when I'm accessing my power voice. How can I relate that? Okay, I'm just pushing through the balls of the feet, unlocking the knees, putting my breath down and filling up the beach ball, and then whatever the next one is. What's my fourth one, Madeline?
Your core, sing from your belly.
Your powerhouse, singing from your belly. So they're just fun, easy. And I said to Madeline, we should start sharing that more with everybody, just because it's such a great, simple way to find your power voice.
But what I love about the 8 somatic vocal tips and techniques is what you guys said before about giving the brain a job. So anytime someone's worried or nervous when they're singing a song, if there's no audience to look at glasses or color of hair, you're focusing on using your core, opening your back teeth, the global head stretch. You're focusing on one of those techniques that not only helps your voice expand and, helps it feel easier, but it gives the brain a job, and all of a sudden you're not in fear anymore.
And creates a neural pathway.
Speaking of somatics.
And building the muscle memory, of course.
Speaking of somatics, I remember when I came to that recording session, Kamal, you were doing acrobatics, Maddy.
Yes.
You still doing?
Do you mean like vocal acrobatics or?
Like,
No, she's a little gymnast, yeah.
I did many years of gymnastics, yeah. Not so much anymore, but the muscle memory is there, I'm sure.
yes, because I remember seeing you do a backbend or something like that and being very envious. And like, yeah, there are certain roles you have to give up, and that's one of them. But I can still do a one-handed cartwheel.
I love it.
Impressive.
I would love to see that.
Clumsy. It's not as good as it used to be, but I think I can pull it off without face planting.
That's awesome.
Important.
Hang out with you. So good. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you so much. So much love to you. Take care. And we look forward to connecting again very soon. Have a beautiful weekend.
Bye now.
Thank you, Madeline. Bye, everybody.